You have been talking, but nobody has been listening. Not because God went anywhere, because what you have been doing in those moments with closed eyes and folded hands was never actually a conversation. It looked like prayer. It had the right posture, the right words, the right timing. But somewhere between your mouth and heaven, something was missing. And deep down, you have felt it for longer than you want to admit. I remember a season in my life where I prayed every single day and felt absolutely nothing. Not emptiness exactly, more like talking into a room I wasn't sure anyone was in. I kept going through the motions because stopping felt worse than continuing. But the honesty I owe you is this. Half of what I was doing in those moments was not prayer. It was performance, habit, religious noise dressed up in spiritual language. And God was not impressed. Matthew 15 verse 8 records Jesus quoting Isaiah with devastating precision. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Lips moving, heart absent. The words are present, the connection is not. And Jesus did not say this about pagans. He said it about religious people. People who showed up, people who knew the language, people who looked, from the outside, exactly like they were doing everything right. Here are the 8 signs that describe that gap between your lips and your heart. 1. You're reciting, not conversing. Your prayers sound identical every single day. Same opening, same list, same closing, same amen. And you have said these words so many times that your mouth completes them while your mind is somewhere else entirely. You are not talking to God. You are running a script at God. And there is a devastating difference between the two. A script requires no presence, no attention, no genuine engagement from either party. You could record it and play it back and the result would be identical. That is not conversation. That is a voicemail God did not ask for. Real prayer is responsive. It moves. It surprises you sometimes with what comes out. It goes in directions you did not plan because genuine conversation with a living God is not predictable. If your prayers have become entirely predictable, that predictability is the first sign that you stopped actually showing up to them. 2. You're performing for an audience that isn't God. This one I learned about myself in the most uncomfortable way. I was asked to lead prayer in a group setting. And somewhere in the middle of what I was saying, I noticed I was constructing sentences for the people in the room rather than the God I was supposed to be addressing. I was choosing words that would sound profound, building phrases that would land well, monitoring the reaction of the room while supposedly talking to heaven. I stopped mid-sentence, because I realized I had not spoken a single honest word since I opened my mouth. Jesus addressed this directly in Matthew 6 verse 5. When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Seen by others. That is the tell. When your awareness of the people around you is stronger than your awareness of God's presence, you are not in prayer, you are in performance. And performance is the enemy of intimacy. 3. You're informing God instead of encountering Him. Your prayer is a detailed briefing of everything God already knows. You explain the situation thoroughly, you provide context, you outline the problem and your preferred solution. You give timelines, and then you say Amen, and wonder why the prayer felt transactional rather than transformational. God does not need your briefing. Matthew 6 verse 8 says, "Your Father knows what you need before you ask Him." Prayer was never designed to transfer information to an uninformed God. It was designed to align a surrendered heart with a sovereign God. The goal is not to bring God up to speed, it is to bring yourself into His presence. The moment your prayer shifts from information delivery to genuine surrender, something changes in the atmosphere. You stop talking about the problem and start talking to the one who holds the solution. That shift is the difference between religious activity and actual encounter. 4. You have no silence in your prayer. You talk the entire time and call it prayer. From the first word to the amen, there is no pause, no listening, no space for God to respond. You treat prayer like a monologue when it was designed to be a dialogue. And then you walk away wondering why you never hear from God while never actually creating the conditions under which he could speak. Elijah discovered God's voice in 1 Kings chapter 19. Not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, in the still, small voice that came after all the noise had passed. That voice required silence to be heard. It was present the entire time. But it could only be received when everything else stopped. I started a practice of sitting in complete silence for 5 minutes after I prayed, just listening. It felt uncomfortable at first, almost wasteful. But in that silence, I began receiving things that no amount of talking had ever produced. Direction, peace, specific impressions that answered questions I had been asking for months. If your prayer has no silence, it has no room for God. 5. You're praying without expectation. You say the words, but you don't actually believe anything will happen, and the prayer reflects it. There is no urgency, no genuine faith underneath the language. You are going through a spiritual routine the same way you brush your teeth, mechanically, habitually, without any real anticipation that this particular prayer on this particular morning is going to produce anything at all. James 1 verses 6-7 is direct about this. The one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Prayer without faith is not prayer. It is religious exercise with spiritual language. Before you pray, ask yourself one honest question. Do I actually believe God is going to respond to this? If the answer is no, then the most important prayer you can pray first is, God, help my unbelief. Mark 9 verse 24. Start there, build from there, but do not continue sending prayers you have already decided will not be answered. 6. You only pray when you need something. God hears from you when things are falling apart, when the diagnosis comes, when the relationship breaks, when the money runs out, when the situation exceeds your ability to manage it alone, and then things stabilize and the prayers thin out until the next crisis. And God becomes emergency services rather than the constant companion he was designed to be. I did this for years. My prayer life was entirely reactive. I prayed hard in valleys and barely at all on level ground. And the result was a relationship with God that felt distant in the good seasons because I had only ever built it in the desperate ones. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 17 says, pray without ceasing. Not pray when necessary, without ceasing. Continuous. Not because God demands constant contact to stay happy, but because a life lived in continuous awareness of God's presence is a fundamentally different life than one that only remembers him in emergencies. If God only hears from you when you are desperate, you have a transactional religion, not a living relationship. 7. Your life contradicts your prayers. You pray for peace, and then spend the rest of the day consuming everything that destroys it. You pray for breakthrough, and then make the same decisions that have been blocking it for years. You pray for God's will, and then make plans that never once consulted him, and you wonder why the prayers feel hollow. They feel hollow because they are disconnected from the life being lived around them. Prayer is not a separate spiritual compartment. It is meant to be the foundation everything else is built on. When your daily choices consistently contradict what you are asking God for in prayer, you are not in conversation with him. You are in negotiation with yourself, using his name. James 2 verse 17 says, faith without works is dead. The same principle applies to prayer. Prayer without corresponding action and alignment is not faith. It is wishful thinking with religious packaging. 8. You feel nothing, and you've stopped caring that you feel nothing. This is the most dangerous sign on this list. Early in prayerlessness, you feel the distance. It bothers you. You miss the connection. You pursue it. But there comes a point, if the distance persists long enough, where you stop missing it. The numbness becomes normal. You pray out of duty and feel nothing and shrug and move on with your day. That numbness is not spiritual maturity. It is spiritual emergency. Revelation 3 verse 16 records God saying to the church at Laodicea, "Because you are lukewarm, I am about to spit you out of my mouth." Lukewarm is not cold. Cold knows it is cold. Lukewarm has settled into a temperature that feels fine. That comfortable settling is what concerned God most. The day you stop being troubled by prayerlessness is the day you need to be most troubled by it. Real prayer is not a performance, not a routine, not an emergency measure or a wish list delivered to heaven. It is a conversation between a person who needs God desperately and a God who has always been present and always been listening for the moment you actually show up to it. You don't need better words. You need a more honest heart. You don't need a longer prayer. You need a more present one. Start there. Start today. Not with the perfect prayer, but with the most honest one you have ever prayed. Share this with a believer and subscribe to see more videos like this one.